This is question 2 of P1.5 end of topic test. On screen now is a mark scheme for the question up to part C. So please mark your work. Part D is on the next slide, so you may want to listen to the rest of the recording to find out how to answer that part of the question. If you get all the question correct, I suggest you move on. If you get parts of the question incorrect, please listen to the rest of the recording to find out how to answer the question correctly in the future. You may wish to pause the recording now so you can mark part A, B and C. On screen now is the mark scheme for part D of the question. Again, you may wish to mark your work for this part of the question. If you get it all correct, please move on to the next question. If you get parts of it incorrect, please listen to the rest of the recording to find out how to answer it correctly in the future. You may want to pause the recording now so you can mark part D. In the first part of the question, it says a student uses a ray box and a semicircular glass block to investigate refraction. It says, what is the vertical dash line called? Now you should know that the vertical dash line is called a normal. Okay, it's got no other name, you need to have the normal, and that's 1 mark. Part B says which angle, V, W, X, Y or Z, is the angle of refraction. Now you should always remember that we measure the angle from the normal to the ray line. So obviously, angle Y, there is the angle of incidence, because that's between the normal and dash line. You can then see that the refracted ray comes out along here, so angle V is the angle of refraction, so that is angle V. And again, no other angle, that's the only one you can have, that's 1 mark. In part C of the question, it asks you why has refraction taken place. Now refraction has taken place because the light has entered a more dense material. Now, in terms of what I've written there, the idea that it's entered a more dense material, that'll get you the mark, that's all you have to write. However, if you want to explain that process further, the light has entered a more dense material, which means it's slowed down. And it's the idea that it's slowing down, but because the light hits at an angle, as it slows down, part of the light slows down first, which causes it to bend. That's why it actually changes direction. Again, if you've had slowed down, that would also get you the mark for this question, or the idea that it's changing speed. You could also get the mark for saying that it's gone from air to glass, believe it or not, and that will also give you a mark for this question. Remember, the question is only out of 1, and then we'll move on to the next part. In this part of the question, you're given some data from the practical, which is angle V measured in degrees and angle Y measured in degrees. So the student studies the data and comes to the following conclusion. Angle Y is directly proportional to angle V. Her friend says that this conclusion is not correct, and you're asked to use data from the table to explain why the conclusion is not correct. So if we just turn our attention to the table, you can see that angle V increases by 10 every time. If we look at angle Y, we can see that it increases by 6 here, between 19 and 25. 6 again, between 25 and 31, which all looks good. But then it's also increased by 4, then by 4 again, and then finally by 2. So you can see that it's not increasing by the same rate every time. And that's basically what you've got to write down into your answer. So just anything that gets that idea across. So in terms of this question already, we've got a mark by doing something like that in terms of the calculation. That will get you 1 mark. We're getting that idea across. The next mark really is for explaining that. So the idea that V increases by 10 each time. But Y does not increase by the same each time. Hopefully I'll put a T there so you can see that I'm continuing to each time. I apologise about writing there, it's just a little difficult on the iPad, and that'll get you the mark as well. Now, some people, when answering this question, made the mistake of thinking that if they're directly proportional to each other, they have to go up by the same each time. They have to be the same numbers. That's not the case. They just need to increase by the same amount each time, which in this case they don't. So that's what you're trying to answer there. Again, one mark for saying that as v increases by 10 each time, y does not increase by the same each time. And a mark for doing some sort of calculation. You could have also said that the ratio between v and y is not the same each time, or you could have said that angle v increases by the same increment, whereas y does not increase by the same increment. Again, they would have both got you the marks. If you're unsure about the marking this question, please ask your teacher to mark it for you. This question proved to confuse a few people, when actually it was quite a straightforward question. It's just the first part of the question, and then this bit coming next got a few people were a little bit confused, I feel. But if you just looked at the data by itself and then try to write a conclusion for it, the conclusion I think is quite straightforward, because as you can see, all these numbers get bigger as you go down, and all these numbers get bigger as you go down. So the correct conclusion for the experiment is really straightforward. It is just that as angle v increases, angle v increases, angle y also increases. And that gets you the mark. So in the last part of the question, it says, why is your conclusion only valid when angle v is between 30 and 80? So you can see the first data we collected at 30, and the last piece of data we collected at 80. So the reason why it's only valid in that range is we have no data or evidence, whichever word you prefer to use, outside of this range. So we can't use any data that's outside of that range because we can't be certain about it. And that brings us to the end of this question.